required by the oath that you took earlier to return the verdict not guilty. So, if we put aside some of what I would call the clutter or distraction in this case, and just look at what is actually relevant and what should help you in your search for the truth or in your weighing of the evidence that's been presented before you, I would suggest to you that most of what you've seen is more or less clutter. Okay? I mean, the state called Dr. Grundy, the state called an expert from Georgia. He was an expert in heat. And he came from Georgia to tell y'all something that every one of you already knows. If you park a car in the direct sunlight in eastern South Carolina in August with no air conditioner and the engine not running, it's going to get too hot to live in that car. So the charts and his testimony and all this, it's filler. Because it doesn't give you a chance to look in Mr. King's heart, which is what you're going to have to do shortly. We conceded in our opening statement that this child was in a car, that it got too hot, and she died. I submit to you that this professor from Georgia doesn't really bring anything new to the table. You can pretty much set it aside because we know what happened. It got too hot in the car and the child died. The pathologist is the same. You already knew before the pathologist ever took the witness stand what had happened with this child. You had heard us conceive that this is what happened. You had seen the videotape that this is what happened. And you knew this child died from me. Really nothing you should do whatsoever. They called this police officer, Captain so-and-so, and I don't know why he's back up here today. But they called him to testify to this key fob. There's been a lot of talk back and forth. But really, what was necessary to hear from him was plain and simple. It came out yesterday. He said, if you unlock the car, or you lock the car, while the engine's running, the lights don't flash. Nobody ever locked or unlocked the car with a key fob that they retrieved from Rita's house. Because as you heard, the battery was dying. Once or twice they hit the key fob, the doors didn't unlock, the lights flickered, and then they didn't flicker anymore. So, fine. You lock it or you unlock it while the engine's running with the key fob, the lights don't flash. It never happened. It's irrelevant in this case. And as much as the solicitor wants to talk about methamphetamine in this case, because it's prejudicial and it's bad and people drink terrible stuff, because it is a terrible drug. Much as he wants to talk about that, they're not charged with methamphetamine. And when the solicitor says the only reason that you know methamphetamine was involved in this case is because their expert came to testify to that, I submit to you that's not true. As a matter of fact, what their witness did, the toxicologist, while I submit she gave you nothing that would help you inside in this case. She said methamphetamine goes to the cycle, you take it in, it peaks in your bloodstream, your body processes, it goes out of your bloodstream. She says, yes, people get a tolerance to it, and I would submit to you that if anybody would have a tolerance to it based on all the evidence that you know, it's probably. She also said that, yeah, Mr. King having 400, that was certainly a level to raise eyebrows and cause concern, but that she's seen it up to 2,000. This doesn't have anything to do with the charge of murder. We don't talk about that. But what she did do was give the defense, wrapped up in a nice box with a fancy bow, a gift to Mr. King. Because she said on the witness stand, under some very strict cross-examination by Mr. Phillips, yes, this stuff can take up to 3 days to get out of your body. She further confirmed to him, I can't say if this is from ingesting methamphetamine that day or the night before, or if it's from 3 days before. I simply can't say that. You know, as your roles, that there's a whole lot of people who would have sat at the defense table, and that would have been the story. I took it 3 days ago when I get on the stand. Only the second time I ever used it. 3 days before that, 2 days before that. I was just tired. That was the only effect I was under. I was outnumbered this time. Mr. King got to the stand, and he rejected that. He took an oath to tell you the truth. And we're hurting, potentially, or at least make the solicitor real happy who has been smoking right in the thing. He told me. No one else was going to tell you he was addicted to methamphetamine. No one else is going to tell you he was what's called a functional addict. That is, that he used methamphetamine throughout the day to allow him to function. He's never been without work, no excuse. Had 5 jobs in his life, he's underused. He's always been functioning, going to work, supporting himself, meeting his needs. But just as there are functional alcoholics, he was a functional addict. No one else was going to tell you. The solicitor heard that right now. He's probably going to talk about it some more because he loves talking about that. Why did he tell you that? Because he tells the truth. Good, bad, let the chips fall where they may. This is what happened. It's not that he didn't want you to know it's a solicitor. The only time he hesitated to answer was when they asked about me. And according to his own code, he said, I'll speak for myself. Then he answered the question on further cause. But the judge will soon tell you that it's up to you as jurors to judge the credibility of the witnesses as they come in here to testify. And credibility means a believability. And there's no magic formula for it, but the judge will tell you it's your own opinion based on your own experience, your own worldview. But when a person testifies, you can see that they testify consistently or inconsistently. They testify, they contradict themselves, or they supported by other facts and evidence or other evidence that's been presented. And I will submit to you that if Mr. King will come in and give the statements given, knowing full well it sounds bad, but he's honest enough to give you that, you can certainly find he's honest enough to give you the rest. If he'll tell you the things that are bad for him and you believe him, you can probably believe him when he tells you the rest of it also. Now, the state has charged Mr. King with murder. I assume it's the worst crime there is. And murder is not hard to define. Murder is the killing of a human being with malice aforethought. First of all, as relates to Larry's case, the murder indictment fails to be. Okay? Larry didn't kill anybody. If you recall and you think back to the solicitor's opening argument, or opening statement, his opening statement, he says that he's going to show you the video where Mr. King rudely comes out with this child, the doors open, he throws the child in like some baggage that he just wants to be rid of her, and he uses the term 2 or 3 more times. He was just baggage. I know y'all want to take my show. Lawyers can't help it. We watch y'all play it. I watch y'all all this morning. I know everybody paid attention. Everybody was involved in the evidence. So, on behalf of Mr. King, thank y'all for that. But you didn't.
So that's an interesting tact by Mr. Loy, and I'm talking about the meth use or lack of use or lots of use by Larry King in this case. It sounds like he's suggesting that the toxicologist that testified about the levels of meth really didn't take into account, A, whether or not this particular defendant had a tolerance for meth because he's been doing it for some time, or the fact that it stays in your system 3 days and therefore any reading may relate to the meth he did that day, the day before, 2 days before. The question I have here, Catherine Lizardo and Joe Richardson, does it help or hurt the defendant to suggest that he wasn't affected by meth that he smoked or drank or injected that day? Catherine, I don't know. It may take kind of a weird excuse off of his plate. What do you think?
When I heard it, I had to take a pause because I thought this does not sound good for Larry King, the defendant, because that means that he knew what was happening to Cristina, that he was lucid and completely coherent. And his counsel said that he was a functioning drug addict. That's the quote I wrote here on my notes, that he's a functional drug addict. So he knew everything that was happening and yet did not help Cristina out. Even though Cristina cannot verbally talk, she could emotionally show what she was feeling. So that, I think, is bad for Larry King not to have done anything, considering that they were standing next to the car while she was burning.
I mean, it is fascinating, and I don't disagree with the tact. I'm a little surprised, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out there. Joe, what I thought was also interesting was the attorney, Mr. Loy, suggesting to this jury, you got to look inside of what's in Larry King's heart. You got to somehow figure that out. I don't know, kind of vague and nebulous. I don't know if they have evidence that can do that. What's your thoughts on that argument?
Well, he's saying look inside his heart, and he's saying, okay, well, here's what you'll see. Here's what his heart is colored with. He's honest. So for better, for worse, he's going to tell you the truth. There's some things that are said here. Hey, listen, somebody died. There's some things that are said here that are not good news. But here's a guy that's going to be honest. He's going to tell you, what he needs to tell you. But I think that if you look inside his heart, going through that window, so the defense closing argument goes, you look in that argument, and then you look in his heart, and then you put that against what you have to show, because he's being prosecuted for murder. He said it like a Southern gentleman, murder. You know what I mean? So he wants them he wants to strongly suggest to them that our guy is imperfect, but he's honest. Again, striking a contrast with his co-defendant, and therefore you shouldn't be coming in high for him at all.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, murder spelled M-U-R-D-A-H, I think is how they spell it there.
Right.
And if folks are saying Colleton County, yeah, that's Alec Murdaugh's area, and we lived there for quite a while as that case unfolded. We will continue to follow this case. When we come back, I do believe that they've wrapped up the closing arguments. We're going to have the verdict watch underway for you, but we will continue to unfold the arguments as the jury begins their deliberations. We'll take a break, come right back.